Hi everyone, welcome to the channel and thank you for your continuous love and support. Today we shall read Emily Dickinson's poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death. As we know that Emily Dickinson was a 19th century American poet. She was born in 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts, and she passed a very reclusive life, a kind of social alienation, and it was self-imposed. She was an eccentric to the local people of that area where she lived. And one interesting fact about Emily Dickinson is that during her lifetime, only 10 of her poems have been published. After her death, her younger sister Lavinia, discovered about 1,800 poems and a few personal letters. And she kept her promise by burning all the correspondence of Emily after her death. Emily's poetry is preoccupied with morbidity, with the thought of death, with the thought of dying, suffocation, suicide, and mortality. Because I could not stop for death is not an exception. In the poem, the speaker, evidently a young woman, is conscious even after her death, and she is consciously traveling with death and immortality to the final destination. The poem beautifully narrates the posthumous journey of the speaker and how she has waited for centuries in her final destination, the graveyard. One significant aspect of the poem is that the primary theme of the poem is death, and the speaker is dead. She is posthumously conscious of the process of death and after death. It's a journey to eternity, it's a journey to timelessness. The poem reminds us of Shakespeare's meditations on death, especially Cleopatra's celebration of death in the final act of Antony and Cleopatra. She quoted death as sweet as balm, as soft as air, as gentle, O Antony, nay, I will take thee. We may also be reminded of Macbeth's speech. After life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. Actually, we don't have much time for death. No time is fit for us to die. We are so glued to the happenings of life, to the to the to the desires of this mundane existence, that we can hardly want to die. Everybody knows that he's mortal, but everybody believes that man is mortal. He is not. He is immortal. And when we lose someone, we lament. We lament that it is not his time for death. Just think of the final soliloquy of Macbeth, when he came to know that Lady Macbeth was dead. He instantly uttered, she should have died hereafter. And after that, the famous soliloquy followed, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. We creep in the petty pace of the last syllable of recorded time. Even Macbeth was not ready to accept Lady Macbeth's death. He wanted death to be postponed. And then he realizes that no man is ever ready, is ever prepared to accept death, to embrace death. Because I Could Not Stop for Death is a poem that celebrates death and the posthumous journey of the dead. So it's a kind of poem that unusually deals with the subject of death, mortality, and morbidity. Because I couldn't stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. Evidently, the speaker is a young woman who was so glued to his life, was so immersed in her personal life, that she had never thought of dying, that she had no time for death. She was so busy in her material life, material existence, that she could not stop for death. And death is personified here as a young shooter. He is a young courtier, a chivalric man who could stop for the woman and visited her one day to take her to her final destination. The beginning of the poem is quite interesting. In the opening line, Dickinson uses a conditional. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held just but ourselves and immortality. The posthumous journey is represented as a journey of a married woman to her in-laws. The image of marriage and the post-nuptial travel are beautifully blended in the first stanza of the poem. So, in the carriage, there were three: the bride, that's the woman; death, the lover, the chivalric hero; and immortality. We slowly drove. He knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too. We slowly drove. Now you know that the life beyond the threshold of the mundane world is a life of eternity. The limitation of temporality ceases the moment we cross that threshold. It's a life of eternity. It's a life of timelessness. As a result, the posthumous journey to the graveyard takes place very slowly. And she completely surrendered herself to death. She surrendered her labor and her leisure. The two words, labor and leisure, define the mundane existence of man. Sometimes we are engaged in active labor. And sometimes when we are tired, exhausted, we enjoy our leisure. But the life after death is not divided into labor and leisure. It's a life of rest. It's a life of eternal waiting. For his civility, next line, we passed the school where children strove at races in the ring. We passed the fields of gauging grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. We passed the school where the children strove at races in the ring. Now, this stanza is symbolic. And in this one stanza, Dickinson is narrating human life from birth to death. The first reference is that of a school where the children are playing at their recess. So childhood is the first stage of human life, and the children are playing, they are at recess in the ring. The ring refers to a ring in the field, in the playground. It may also symbolize the cycle of death, birth. The cycle of life and death is well symbolized by the word ring here. The next scene, the next line offers a new landscape. It's a landscape of a countryside. It's a pastoral space. It's a cornfield. They passed the fields of gauging grain. They were passing by the cornfields and the grains, as if the grains were looking at them. Now, gauging grain symbolizes food, stands for food, and it represents cultivation or human occupation. That is the maturity of man, adulthood, labor. We passed the setting sun. Setting sun stands for the end of life, the twilight of life, the old age, decrepitude, and the weak, weary desire, thirst, waiting for the final rest. Or rather, he passed us. Look how movement, how the dynamism, the kinesis of one agency is transferred to another. The speaker is moving, but she feels as if the sun passed us. And more importantly, here sun is personified, and more importantly, the sun is a phallic agency, just like death. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tune. As the sun set, the whole landscape is consumed by darkness and chill. The speaker felt the chill and she was quivering because she was wearing a gossamer. She was wearing a semi-transparent gown. Gossamer here refers to a gown made from a semi-transparent fabric. My tippet is a long scarf or shawl made from a semi-transparent fabric, and tulle refers to a very thin material that's used for making veils. So you see, the speaker is underdressed, and this shows that she was not prepared for death. She is in her inner garment. She's not ready for the journey, and she shivers, she suffers the chill of death. We are going to read the second part of the poem in the next video. I hope you will enjoy that poem. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.